Our guest this episode is Jack Dyer, ranked in the top 1% of LinkedIn storytellers and known for guiding leaders to communicate with clarity and impact. As a founder of Storytold, he has spent over 15 years helping CEOs share their vision in a way that feels genuine and drives real business results. Jack's approach combines strategic thinking with compelling visuals to create stories that attract opportunities and strengthen reputations. From shaping leadership messages to building brand presence, he knows how to turn ideas into influence. Here to discuss how storytelling can increase both your reach and your revenue, please welcome to the podcast, Jack Dyer. Jack, welcome.
Welcome to the Engaging Personalities Podcast. I'm Anders Belanger, founder and CEO of Engagify, where we're on a mission to rehumanize business through engagement. We believe that we can all be more successful if we can command attention and deepen connection. So stick around to the end of the show and we'll reveal how you can be our next guest on a future episode. So let's get ready to engage.
Hello, thank you. Very good to be
Awesome. Yeah, so glad you could make it. And I just stumbled upon you recently on LinkedIn. So it's like, our paths crossed in that sort of digital social media kind of way. And then I think I only watched like one or two posts of yours, and I'm like, okay, I want to interview this guy on the podcast. So that's how I found you. So what I want to find out about is just, let's start at the start, Jack. How did you come to this place? Because I don't imagine you just jumped right into storytelling. You probably have a little bit of a backstory. Can you tell our listeners, how you arrived at this place in your career?
For sure, yeah. So I've been a career designer all my life, and where you say as well that I've spent the last 15 years empowering CEOs, that has been in a 9-to-5 role. It's always been as a designer. Starting off as a junior designer, working at an agency in the Forest of Dean in England. Anyone listening, go to the Forest of Dean. It's a beautiful, magical place. We worked in a barn in my first job. Little creative agency working with big clients like Jaguar Land Rover, Mercedes, BP, huge, wonderful clients. And started there as a junior designer. Moved up to, I was headhunted, poached by an app design company. The guy wanted to create the next Facebook, and it didn't quite pan out as he planned. But ultimately, the app was a cool app, and the design was good, but the user experience wasn't so good. And when I suggested, why don't I transition my role from design into user experience design, he was like, yes, let's do it. So as part of that role, I learned everything about user experience, both in my own time and in my working hours, dedicated fully to understanding this whole new field, which is so much more in-depth than just what you can see. It's the visuals, it's the psychology, it's what makes a design lovable, why people love the design, and how they engage with the website. And that tapped into this sort of deep meaning behind websites. If we see something we like, that's very surface level, that's fine, but there's going to be something on the page, some like pull, some gravitas that the website has to draw you in and make you feel like a delight and that you want to engage with that company. And that's the essence of UX. So I moved on from that job, got a job as a UX designer officially then, in Cardiff, capital of Wales, lovely, lovely city, and worked there for a couple of years before going freelance. And as a UX designer, being a freelance person, you get excited to go out and do all these lovely projects, but then everyone just goes, I just want you to design a nice website or business cards or print brochures, and you sort of get dragged back into design, but that core understanding for user experience is still there. So a few years later, went back into a 9-to-5 and ended up working with the most incredible company which designed for private schools. We're talking 2021, 2022 now. Private schools all around the world. I was fortunate enough to be sent out to schools in Washington, DC, over in Boston, over in Los Angeles as well. We had so many different clients, and I'm proud to say that I've designed quite a few websites for very, very famous private schools, which is wonderful. But the thing that struck me most, and I'm getting to the crux of your question now, was that every one of those teachers, every one of the children, every one of the faculty, they all had stories. They all had something that drove them, some reason they became who they are and where they are now. And that, finding out that in person on these meetings was the most engaging part of my entire career, because it wasn't just looking at a screen and designing pixels. It was tying back to that emotionally resonant state of design, which I learned about in UX, which is the why. Why do people do what they do? Why does a website look as engaging as it is? Like, what makes it special? And I realized that underneath everything is the story behind it. So I created Storytold to help others tell their story. So now I'm not just doing it for other CEOs in other companies and private schools as an employee. I'm now the CEO of my own company, empowering others to share their story, to grow, and to get more engaged customers, because it's based on the why. It's not just, what it looks like. It's about who it is.
That's a very fascinating journey, because like we were talking about homepages there for a while, and I'm like, when's the story kick in here, Jack? But in a sense, like as I'm wrapping my head around that journey, it's kind of like the stories that we tell and even who we are is our user experience, person to person, face to face, right? Kind of like how we carry ourselves is, and that's an interesting analogy, especially for people who are maybe tech first kind of thinking, right? Like, the idea that, we do a lot of training of systems engineers, on presentation techniques and that sort of thing to engage with their customers. And oftentimes, and I'm broadly generalizing, but those engineers are a little bit in their heads, right? And they're not in their bodies as much. But I think that's such a great analogy that, like, hey, we are going to optimize your user experience for the customer, physically, in a sense. So, okay, that's cool. So can you tell me about, and it might be a while ago, it might be recently. Is there a story that you uncovered of a customer that was very transformative, or something that just kind of like was a real aha moment for them, so that people can kind of relate a little bit more to what you're talking about?
Well, 100%. Yeah, I've got a couple of lovely examples. One was this Scottish lady who came to us wanting to promote her financial services product. I won't go into too much detail about it, but ultimately she was struggling to position her brand and how this came across to others. I asked her a bunch of questions about her past and like her background in sales and working in retail and what she learned along the way, and her new sort of venture into entrepreneurship and how that differed from everything she'd learned in the past, but she could still apply those values to what she does now. She realized that ultimately the way she comes across isn't actually as a financial services person selling services and features. It's a connection builder. It's a relationship builder. She forms partnerships and relationships with people, and that is the main offering. It just happens to be that she connects people who are in financial services, and she uses that knowledge in a different way. But having that mental flip in our conversation, having that, oh, so yeah, I don't actually just sell a service, I provide real connections. And as you said at the start about your podcast, it's much more engaging, and it's much more empowering to be able to do that. So that was one thing. Another thing was we helped this coach in New Jersey. She's still a current client, and she's absolutely wonderful. Like, love her to bits. She was struggling to communicate more personally online. Her posts were very much about high achievement and all the sort of things she coaches others on. But she found it hard to open up and share something personal about her own life. I'm an open book on LinkedIn. If you ask me anything, I'll generally just tell you. And no matter the embarrassing stories or whatever, I've made mistakes, I've messed up in the past, but ultimately it all leads to where I am now. She didn't want to be seen to make mistakes. She had to be the perfect coach. And that was to her detriment, because the second she started opening up and she shared something incredibly personal about her life, her likes on LinkedIn skyrocketed. Her comments went from about 10 per post to over 200 on one post. All the engagement, and she had loads of people reposting her stuff. And the metrics are great, but what really got to me, and what really is the reason I do this, and me and my little team are so invested, is because a rabbi came up to her. She's part of the Jewish community, and a rabbi came up to her and said, "I would love to talk to you and meet you in real life. Your post brought tears to my eyes. It was so impactful. It was so moving. I would love it if you could help others in my community now with what you've written." And I was so happy because I wrote those words and I had that real impact on this lady's life, outside of just business. And that's what it's all about, having real tangible impact.
Yeah. And I think it sounds to me, Jack, that you almost like gave her permission to be herself, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if for anyone listening to this, I mean, that's good advice for everyone. Like I think about, authenticity a lot, and I think we're going to dig into that right now. But even when I'm doing like the podcast, I'm a pumped up version of who I am normally, right? Like I'm kind of like, hey, I want people to listen to this and I want to be on point. But of course we make mistakes, and it's kind of, I sometimes think maybe I got to make this podcast more conversational in a more like button down way, not buttoned up. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So,
yeah.
But like that takes I mean, and what I'm talking about isn't that courageous, but I'm saying what your customer, your client did, probably a bit of arm twisting, I'm going to guess, for her to share something so personal. And
it was tough.
I see that as a trend that, you see huge engagement on very personal posts. But then sometimes, Jack, and this is where we talk about authenticity, sometimes I see people sharing some stuff that I feel like was almost designed to look like a vulnerable post, but you know what I'm saying? Like, and it's kind of like, yeah, I don't buy it. Like, I feel like you're just trying to post,
Yeah. And that is tough. Like, we help people avoid the performative trap. Like some people, it looks like they are trying to just be, well, look at me. This is very much, I'm out to get attention. Here's something personal and I want you to look at me. We avoid that completely. Like if there's even a hint of that creeping into the work that we start to do, and we sort of do a little fact check and say, does this seem performative? Is this being shared for the right reasons? The way to make sure that we're always helping others and avoiding that trap is to ask that question. Does what we're sharing put the customer first? Does it put the user first? And does it help others more than it helps our client? In that case, yes. Like, obviously we want to share things that help our clients, but our clients get much more value when they are sharing stuff that helps other people, because it isn't about them. So as you started into that, I was like, wait, but how do you know it's not performative? And you got there and you told us. And so I think that's a really good litmus test for that, because I think that would also, we can all get in our heads. Like, I think about times where I've never been one to post a selfie from the gym or after a run or anything like that. Like, I was very close to one time, and then I was like, "Who am I kidding?" Like, and no offense to others who do that, right? But I just like, this is not what am I doing? I'm like, hey, I worked out. Well, good for you. That being sensitive to that performative thing, I think that's such a great question. And I think there's probably some like geographical, cultural filters that layer on top of that, Jack. Like, you're from the UK, I'm Canadian. Well, Canadians are a little more humble than Americans, right? And the UK, very much that's where we get it from, is from you guys, right? But it's like, but it's kind of like, do you find that working on different sides of the pond, what people are willing to share and put out there? 100%. Yeah. We've got two UK clients, and it's a lot harder to get over that self-deprecating aspect.
Yeah.
Like in the UK, we very much put ourselves down, and that's not so good. Whereas Americans generally tend to love, being more exuberant and being more excitable and talking about themselves, and it's just a lovely culture thing. But it does make our jobs a little easier when we've got someone who's already open to the concept.
Mm.
When we have to fight and make sure that people see the value in it, that's the challenging bit. But we've got a whole process at the start, called our sort of discovery process, which hopefully we've seen so far. It really tends to get into the nitty gritty of who someone is, and they sort of have those light bulb moments, which is really nice to see.
So for those people listening, going like, I mean, sometimes storytelling, and I don't know what year this happened, but I always felt like, oh, that became a real, not a buzzword, but like a thing,
Yeah,
right? Like, and I mean, obviously stories go way back, like
yeah,
that's how we, spoken history, or, that kind of piece. So that it's built into us. It's like wired into us, right? Hero's journey and all of that stuff that comes up, and you see in every movie, just
yeah.
done differently to make it entertaining. But I think a lot of people, if they haven't, and I think about a lot of speakers like this too, if they haven't climbed Mount Everest, you know,
Yeah.
overcome some sort of challenge or some sort of like, and they think epically, like it's some sort of newsworthy kind of story. I think people often feel they don't have a story, right? Or they're
Yeah.
just too plain, or they're normal, or they're, I don't know, like there's some people that are like, wow, that's impressive, but that's not what I have. Can you kind of maybe peel back or pull back the curtain a little bit on sort of that process that you work with your clients? Just because I think a lot of people are listening are like, yeah, storytelling, I get it, but I wouldn't have a clue where to start.
You know what? I'm so glad you've asked that, because me and my designer were talking about this the other day. It's a really challenging thing, because I used to think that way too. I used to think, well, I'm just a 9 to 5 designer, as I sort of, bored you at the start with that very long sermon about, how I started my career. I was just, the regular theme was I jumped from job to job, and I haven't like saved any people from fires. I haven't, jumped through burning buildings or resuscitated people on the side of the road. I haven't done anything impactful like that I would go, wow, those people, like the sort of care workers or paramedics and ambulance people, those are the real heroes who actually have stories that are engaging. All I've done is done my job for several years, but the lessons that I've learned from that are the stories are all around like my personality, and how that things that I've learned, areas where I've ventured out and messed things up and then ventured back in. And like, even if you think you're just on the same path as everyone else, you're traveling along the motorway or the highway or the freeway. And I never know, in Canada, is it highway or freeway or motorway?
You say highway. Yeah, highway usually.
Highway, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you're traveling along the highway. There's 1,000 other cars all around you, all just doing the same thing. You're living your life on autopilot. You're just in cruise control. You're traveling along, and so every stop sign you pass, every billboard you pass, every part of your journey, there's elements of things that you see along the way that you just don't even register. Part of what we do is try and make you think back and think, well, what about if you'd have taken that off ramp back there? Where would that have led you? What about that idea you had that you never pursued? What about that career path that never was? What did you want to be when you were 6? And who are you now? Like, where's the difference? So we were at a conference, and my writer and I, we were at a conference in London, just in the audience. We weren't presenting or anything, and there were a panel of experts, 3 people at the end. And I stood up. I'm an introvert, by the way, so perfectly comfortable in settings like this. But being in a big room full of people and talking in front of everyone, scary stuff. But I stood up. They came over with a microphone, and I was like, shaking, not visibly, but getting to the point where I just wanted to ask this question because I had to know. 3 experts. I asked them. Everyone else was asking things like, what are your KPIs for the next year, and how did you evolve your brand, and where are you planning on going with it? I didn't care about any of that. I just asked them, what did you want to be, each of you, when you were 6 years old? And the whole room turned to look at me, and my writer was like, good question. She sort of nudged me, and the experts, they were thrown. They didn't know what to do. They were uncomfortable. They were out of their comfort zone. And two of them, it was two ladies and a man, and the two ladies sort of went, I don't know. I'll have to think about that. And I just, the guy then jumped in and said, same question to you. He was very defensive straight away. He didn't know what to do. So he jumped straight on the defensive track and went, why did you ask that? And I'm like, well, because I'd love to know the answer. I'd love to know who you are now compared to who you wanted to be when you were a kid. And he said, what about you? And I was like, being put on the spot again, he flipped it back onto me. And I said, if it's okay, I'd love to hear your answers first, and then I'll tell you why I asked that question. And then they went back, and the first woman said a teacher, second woman said a dancer, the man said an F1 driver, probably. He didn't really know, maybe an F1 driver. Again, very defensive. And the thing about that is that I then said, well, I wanted to be a space cowboy. When I was a kid, I was 10 years old when Firefly came out, amazing TV show. And I wanted to be Nathan Fillion. I wanted to be Captain Malcolm. So I loved that. And the reason I asked the question was because it deliberately made you uncomfortable. And we only grow when we're out of our comfort zone. We only figure that out when we're not safe. And so, perfectly safe environment, but they didn't feel safe when suddenly this guy was asking them something personal about themselves. And in that moment, the real them shone through just for a sec. They ditched the professional mask. They just were themselves, trying to figure out, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a teacher. Why am I not a teacher now? I'm in data. Like, how did that happen? So there will be an impactful moment in their lives later on when they maybe go, okay, well, now I can start a new chapter in my life, or I can tell a new story. And it's a very exciting thought that just that one question might have helped them.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting moment, almost as a grounding exercise, or a pattern interrupt to put
Yes.
people, to make people themselves, right?
Yeah.
Or even I wonder what this would have been like, you being an introvert, if you were on stage in a panel and I was moderating, and you were there with some other people, and I said, okay, first question, everybody, this is easy. What did you want to be when you were 6 years old? And then you're like, oh, I know that one, Space Cowboy. Oh, by the way,
Yeah.
Jack, my son who's 13, we just started watching Firefly. I'd seen it before, but we're going through them. So I'm with you on that.
Amazing.
Do you think, Jack, getting back to this panel idea, imaginary thing, would that have settled you in on stage a little bit, because you had to kind of, go into yourself, not go into yourself in a reflexive, like protective way, but just this kind of like drawing the real you out? Do you think that would help you as an introvert? I'm just curious.
It's an interesting question. I think it might help me go, yes, this is what I wanted to be as a kid. I'm now surrounded by a room of like thousands of eyes looking at me, feel very uncomfortable. But you know what? If I can just go back to that state of everything's chilled, as a kid, the whole world is ahead of you. You don't know what's to come. It's quite exciting. Your story has yet to be written, so to speak. That state of mind might be quite nice to be in. But I can also appreciate, I did put them on the spot. I did make them feel uncomfortable. For the record as well, afterwards, that one lady who said she wanted to be a teacher, she found me. She sought me out after the call. We all sort of went to network and mingle, and she made a beeline straight for me and said, thank you so much for asking that. I was super uncomfortable, but it really made me think. And I was like, brilliant. That's what we want. So the real her shone through for a sec.
Yeah. So that getting the real people out. And I think, that not making mistakes is that one piece where we try to protect ourselves, right? I think expectations of the marketplace, social media, there's a lot of layers of things that protect us or prevent us from coming across in the way that we want to come across. With leaders that you're working with, Jack, Uh, is storytelling a useful tool for, well, for helping them lead their own people, not just like out in the marketplace, and maybe something about, the company's reputation. Can you speak to that kind of thing? How that might help?
100%, yeah. All the best leaders are those who are obviously professional and like performing well and helping their team and leading from a place of authority. But they're also the ones who are real and relatable. We don't respect people who are robotic at the top and they isolated and they shut themselves off and they see everyone else as beneath them. If someone's like that, it's very hard to work with them. Ultimately, those are the people who can benefit the most from storytelling, from sharing parts of their lives. And if you're listening to this and you're a leader in your company and you think, right, I know that I need more engagement, I need more connection with both myself, my team, my business, and my customers, but I don't know how, then we can help. That's exactly what we love to do. Obviously, if you're really closed off and closed minded, it's not going to work. You have to be open to the concept of self improvement, but not in a painful way, just in a, okay, things will get a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit messy while I try and figure out how my business aligns with my personality. And also that's the biggest cause of disconnect in the workplace as well. If you're just in the grind, you're just doing the day to day, you sort of lost that zest for work and that zest for life, and you're just sort of performing. There's no fun. You need to reconnect your business to your personality and to who you are, and that is a really engaging thing that we help people do. And then once we've nailed that, we then start telling stories about you as a person, grow your personal brand, and your business will sort of grow too. It's sort of like they level both of them up, which is really nice.
Do you find that you attract leaders that are open to this already? Because I mean, or do you ever get some going, oh, like, I imagine if they reach out, they're going to be ready to be coached, like, and to be
Yes.
taken through the process. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah,
Now,
for sure.
what's the I mean, there's many different ways or mediums that you can distribute these stories in a sense. So I'm saying like video, and social media, on a blog, I'm guessing, um, in person, on stage. Are those kind of the main three, or are there more, I guess, ways of rolling these stories out, or what are the most common?
Yeah, so the biggest thing we do is LinkedIn content writing, and that is the simplest way of distilling it. For mass audiences, is just we write your LinkedIn posts. We do at least 3, maybe 5 LinkedIn posts every week. We sort of get into a pattern that works for you, but it'll be like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or every day of the week, and they're all based on personal stories, things that have happened to you recently, things that are topical. But as you said, we've also got a podcast that we do. We've got a newsletter. We've just started writing blog articles for people. We've got events, in-person events. We're actually going to be hosting one of these events in the coming months. I can't say too much at the moment because it's still in the idea stage, but it's a very exciting prospect. And yeah, even like we help leaders to tell their stories by writing their stories for them. All they do is come with the ideas. Then we go, great, okay, I understand this person, I understand their personality, their tone of voice, how they want to communicate. They've just given us an idea. We'll then take that, we'll add a photo, we'll run with it, and then we'll build it into a story, get it ready to post, and then it's out. And it's a surprising amount of work that goes into just each LinkedIn post, because most people, I think that's the difference. Most people just post something without thinking about it. They
Yeah.
expect the algorithm to pick it up and then that they'll become viral, and that's just not how it works. If you do the research, if you engage with the person's personality and post from their writing from their heart, effectively, that's what we see real engagement with. But to answer your question, yeah, like loads of different mediums. We also have just started doing short form video content. So we would fly out, if it's a company in America, for example,
Hmm.
we would fly out, do the shoot for a couple of days, stay in a hotel, and then fly home. And in those 2 days, we would probably capture 4 months, maybe 5 months worth of content that then we get edited and get out there, and drip feed it out to different social channels, primarily LinkedIn. Um, it's a very exciting time.
Yeah. Well, and thank goodness. I mean, well, LinkedIn's had video for a while, but there was a time where there was no video on LinkedIn. It was crazy, right? Like it was,
Yeah.
and LinkedIn, I'm noticing is becoming, well, a little bit more Facebook-like, a little bit more, other, well, lots of other. So it's blending into other things and kind of finding a new almost identity. But there is a lot more heart on LinkedIn now. I find
For
that
sure.
the stories that you're helping people tell. Have you noticed any like hacks for the LinkedIn algorithm? And hacks, just maybe best practices, maybe not even hacks, because I find it's suddenly changed all of a sudden too, where the notifications are telling us about everybody, like nothing to do with
Yeah.
me. Like, I don't know. What are you seeing out there, Jack, in terms of the LinkedIn, feeds?
Yeah, so the biggest thing, the biggest sort of, I'm going to say the word hack, but it isn't really. It's more of a strategy.
Yeah.
Is to engage as much as possible with everyone else, because it's kind of like in real life. Like if I went up to you, if we met in a networking thing or in person, even in a pub, and I came up to you and I said, "Hi, Anders, good to meet you," and I put my hand out. That's me opening myself up. I'm being vulnerable. Yeah, I'm saying let's shake hands. But I'm making that first move. I'm coming up to you and saying, this is me wanting to connect. And in order to do that, ultimately, all around the world, that's the universal sign of starting conversation, of friendship about to form. And it's a nice way to say, I'm vulnerable. I'm not, being all defensive and, crossed-armed. I'm literally saying, let's meet. The equivalent is when you go and like someone else's post or comment on their post and just check in with them and say, I like what you've done. This is great. Let's start a conversation. Ultimately, engagement is the biggest thing, because when you do that, you're showing other people that you value their stuff. If you just sit on LinkedIn and you just post stuff and you never engage with anyone else, you're not going to succeed. You have to get out there. You have to like, you have to comment, you have to sort of do those little like, hover, and celebrate or support or love or insightful posts. When you do that, you show other people that you're interested in them and that you're not being selfish. You make them the hero, and that's what we do as well. So we on our clients' behalf, we go out and do all of this engagement, and it's still very like, it's a bit tricky, because often you might think, well, isn't that very authentic? That's not very authentic if you're doing it on your client's behalf. But because we fully understand our clients and we communicate in their tone of voice, effectively we're just like a silent partner who are invested in our client's success, and we help them to engage because they're so busy doing everything else. They're running their businesses. But yeah, the biggest hack, the biggest strategy is to go out there and engage. The second biggest is to optimize your profile, make it so that when people click on your little comment or your little face that's liked their post, they don't just see like a blank wall of text. They don't just see something really boring. They come to a profile that's really energetic and engaging, and every part of it is optimized. So my profile picture isn't a circle, it's a squashed circle with my head poking out the top. I've also got a pink background, which for a straight man is pretty unusual to have a pink background. Again, all these little things that stand out from the crowd and look a little bit different. So I've also got the dancing man emoji in my name, and I removed that for 4 days? No, 3 days. I removed it, and 4 people messaged me who I had never really heard of before. They just sort of came out of the woodwork and said, "Jack, you've removed your emoji. What happened?" It's like, wow, there you go. So all those things lead to people going, this person is on LinkedIn, they're recognizable. We help our clients do that, to become different on LinkedIn and therefore stand out.
Nice. And I got to say, I didn't notice the dancing emoji, but I did notice a very great LinkedIn profile page. And so for anyone listening, they should definitely check out Jack's. And it's Jack Dyer. They're going to find you, DYER,
That's it. Yeah.
last name. So that's how they can reach out to you, Jack. This has been great, Jack. I appreciate your time and coming on and sharing about what you do. And I think it's like you were saying earlier, it's a really fascinating time, exciting time. And just to be able to help people and the service that you offer, I think is much needed. And sounds like a huge time savings for people too, right? For trying to, get their message, get their story out there. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Can I leave the audience with one thought as well?
Yeah, please do. Yeah, final thought. I love it.
If you're trying to stand out, if you're trying to be different, don't use ChatGPT, don't use AI, because you can spot an AI post a mile away and there's no heart, there's no soul. Most importantly, there's no you. People buy from people. We don't buy from AI. So if you think you're going to save time by going on ChatGPT saying, this is my business, you can give it the best prompts in the world. You can say, this is my business, this is what I do. Generate me 100 LinkedIn posts to cover me for the next third of a year. If you do that, then everyone's going to see that you just use AI. They're not going to engage with you. It's going to be a damage to your reputation. And because everyone else is using AI, get off the motorway. Everyone else is on the highway. Everyone else is on the highway doing the AI thing. Travel down the scenic route. Do something different. Tell your story. That's what people buy.
Awesome. Great advice. Thank you. And to all of our listeners tuning in once again, thank you so much for checking us out. And until next time, you know what to do. Stay engaged.
Thank you so much for listening to Engaging Personalities. If you believe this world needs more engagement and you're an industry leader or you have an interesting take on rehumanizing business, go to go.engagify.ai/podcast-guest to apply and come on the show. If you got something out of this interview, do you mind sharing it on your social media? Just grab a quick screenshot with your phone and text it to a friend or post it on the socials. If you know someone that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show. Include the hashtag Engaging Personalities. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episode, go ahead and subscribe. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and mean a lot to me and my team. Want to know more? Go to our website, engagify.ai, or follow me on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening and stay engaged.